Assalamu alaikum to dear viewers of Knowledge Galaxy. Today our topic is brain. Brain is the most complex structure in the known universe. There are as many individual cells in the brain as there are stars in our galaxy. Brain is a physical thing which is defined as a structure that contains billions of cells and weighs about 3 pounds. Human brain is like one of the most powerful and sophisticated computers in the world. Brain is consist of basically three basic parts: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Forebrain is the most important part in these three. Forebrain includes diencephalon, the limbic system, the two halves of cerebral hemisphere, and the outermost covering that is called the cerebral cortex. It has basically the following parts: cerebral cortex, hemispheres, corpus callosum, lobes, areas of cortex, thalamus, basal ganglia, hypothalamus, and limbic system. Cerebral cortex means outer bark or covering. Cerebral cortex is also called the cerebrum. It is our center for processing and storing information about the world in which we live, and it also the starting place for virtual all of our voluntary actions. Cerebral cortex is significantly larger than any other brain structure. It is a complex, delicate development of the highest region of forebrain and its most recently developed part of the brain in the ovulation scheme. Planning and thinking take place here as their highest mental functions. It covers the lower portion of the brain like a large cap. In humans, the cerebral cortex is greatly convoluted with lots of grooves and bulges which considerably enlarge its surface area. It's highly connected with other parts of brain. Hemispheres are the two divisions of cerebral cortex, so the two hemispheres of the brain are similar in many ways. Two sides of the brain have primarily responsibility for different functions. The tendency of one cerebral hemisphere to play a more dominant role than the other in controlling particular functions is called the cerebral dominance. In forebrain, there are also areas of cortex, we can say sensory area, motor area, and associative area. Sensory area is responsible for the impulses from sense receptors are sent. It receives information from senses. The senses which is activated deal with its own sensory area, reflecting their relative importance to us. Large areas of the cerebral cortex are involved with vision and hearing. Motor areas. Some of our action originates below the cerebral cortex, although some lower brain centers may be involved. It is fair to say most voluntary activities originate in the motor areas of the cerebral cortex. Associative area. Higher mental processes occur in associative areas after sensory and motor areas. The remaining area is called the associative area. Here, sensory input is associated with motor responses. Cognitive functions such as problem solving, remembering, and thinking occur here. Damage to the very front of frontal lobe may interrupt and destroy the abilities to plan ahead, think quickly, or think things through. There is no distinction in the brain. Another part of the forebrain is thalamus. It is positioned right below the cerebral cortex and is ultimately involved with its functioning. Major role of the thalamus is to process information from the senses, many impulses from the cerebral cortex to lower brain structure. The spinal cord and out to the peripheral nervous system also passes through the thalamus. Thalamus collects and directs sensory messages to the appropriate areas of the cerebral cortex. Message from our lower body over eyes, ears, and other senses passes through the thalamus. It also has a role in person's normal pattern of wakefulness and sleeping. That is why it is considered sensory restoration at its send impulses to the appropriate area of the cerebral cortex. Basal ganglia. Above the thalamus and under the cerebral cortex lie large cluster of ganglions of neurons called basal ganglia. The basal ganglia work with the cerebellum and the cortex to control and coordinate voluntary movements. Basal ganglia enable people to engage in habitual behaviors such as riding a bicycle. Individual with its damage suffer from either unwanted movement or too little movement. Hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is located near the limbic system. It is involved in our innovational and emotional reactions. Its major responsibility is to monitor critical internal bodily functions. It controls eating behavior and is sensitive to the amount of fluid in our bodies, indirectly giving rise to the feeling of being thirsty. The hypothalamus also acts as a thermostat, triggering the several automatic reactions should we become too warm or too cold. Among other things, it also influences many functions of endocrine system. Endocrine is basically a system of the glands. Furthermore, it is involved in aggressive and sexual behaviors and regulate many hormones. Limbic system. The limbic system is a collection of structure rather than a single unified one. It controls many complex behavior patterns that we usually think of as instinctive. Within the human brain, parts of the limbic system are involved in display of emotional reaction. It has basically the three main structures: amygdala, septum, and hippocampus. Amygdala is a house of emotion. It looks like almond shape, so it is involved in discrimination of objects that are necessary for the organism's survival as approach food, mates, and social rivals. Septum is another part of the limbic system. It has the opposite effect. It reduces the intensity of emotional reaction when stimulated. Hippocampus is basically part of limbic system. It is involved in formation of memories. People with damaged hippocampus are unable to remember events for a short period of time. It has special role in storage of memories. The hemispheres. Hemispheres has a two sides, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. The left hemisphere of the cerebral cortex is the large of the two halves, contain a high proportion of gray matter and is thought to be the dominant hemisphere. Language structure is housed in the left cerebral hemisphere, but for all right-handed people. Left hemisphere has the corpus callosum. The two hemispheres of the cerebral cortex are interconnected by a series of fibers called the corpus callosum. Through corpus callosum, one side of our cortex remains in complete contact with the other. Experimenters confirm that speech production is a left hemisphere function in a greater majority of people. Left hemisphere can be given credit for most of our language skills, our reliance on the language. The right hemisphere. Right hemisphere involving in the process of visually presented information, skill in the visual arts, drawing and painting is associated with the right hemisphere more than left. The right hemisphere is also credited with the being more involved in emotionality. A major task of right hemisphere is the appreciation. Patients with right hemisphere damaged are likely more to be perceptual and attentional problems, including serious difficulties in spatial orientation. Lobes. There are four lobes: frontal lobe, temporal lobe, parietal lobe, and occipital lobe. Frontal lobe is most important lobe. It is located in the front of the brain. It is involved in higher cognitive function like intelligence, voluntary muscle movement, and personality. Temporal lobe is right above the ears and it is involved in memory and hearing. Parietal lobe is somatosensory cortex that is involved in processing information about body sensations. Occipital lobe is just behind the eyes and it is involved in visual stimuli, their color, shape, and motions. Midbrain. It is between the forebrain and hindbrain. Many nerve fiber systems ascend and descend to connect the higher and lower portions of the brain. It works as relay information between the eyes and the ears. The ability to attend to an object usually is linked to one bundle of neuron in the midbrain. Hindbrain. It includes pons, medulla oblongata, cerebellum, reticular activating system, and brainstem. Pons. Just above the medulla is the pons. It serves as a bridge between brain and spinal cord. Center in the pons are responsible for the rapid movement of our eyes, which occurs when we are asleep and dreaming. Other pons centers are involved in determining our cycle of being awake and being asleep. Medulla oblongata. The very lowest structure of the brain is the medulla oblongata, whose motor function involve involuntary reflexes. There are many small structures within the medulla that control each function as reflexive eye and tongue movement. Medulla contains the center that control breathing and reflexes monitor the muscles of the heart to keep it breathing rhythmically. At the medulla, nerve fibers to and form the brain, cross over from left to right and vice versa. Cerebrum. Cerebellum. It is a brain structure whose major function is to smooth and coordinate rapid eye movements because of the close relationship between body movement and vision. Many eye movements originated in the cerebellum. Movement of tongue, lips, and mouth are coordinated here. A person with damaged cerebellum may appear to be quite drunk. It is also called the little brain because damage in cerebellum disrupts the motor activity of the body. Thank you so very much for watching. Kindly like and subscribe our channel and push the bell icon button for more updates.